Cô ơi, cháu xin cốc trà đá với ạ. Cháu cốc trà đá nhé.
Chào mừng các bạn đã đến với Beyond Trà Đá của Trà My và Huyền Lê. Mình là Huyền Lê ở Frankfurt. Welcome to Beyond Trà Đá. My name is Huyền Lê in Frankfurt, Germany. Today's guest is very special for me personally. If you already watched the second episode of Beyond Chada podcast, or if you happen to come across the article on VN Express about myself, you probably remember my former boss as well as my mentor since I started working for his company in Singapore. That is Christopher Sayer. By the way, it's funny. I never know that you are actually Christopher until I do research for this talk. I always call you Chris, and I assume that's your full name. Anyway, some background information about Chris. He's a founder and managing partner of Marketica Singapore. It's a family office that provides strategy and guidance in the area of wealth management, legacy planning, and corporate strategy or corporate advisory. He has served and continues to serve as non-executive director on the boards of many privately held companies, representing the interests of shareholders and clients. In 2018 and 19, he has traveled the world with his wife to visit blue zones of longevity. So Chris and I will discuss this topic today, career choices and how the fear of lack of money and financial security affect your career choices. So let's get started. Hi, Chris. So how was your Easter holiday? I heard that you wanted to spend time with your grandkids and your family. How is everyone doing? And were you guys in Bali, right?
Yeah, we're in Bali. We've been here since November. And I came here for some work-related some work-related things I needed to do here. I help oversee Green School in Bali, which is a great project started by a client of mine, and I oversee that as the chairman of the board. So given COVID and all the challenges that really many businesses over the world are facing, my wife and I decided to come here in November and be based here as we navigate through COVID. But it's been a great place to be. You're right that for Easter, or just even before Easter, my family from the States. So our oldest is a daughter who lives in America, and she has 3 kids. So she and her 3 kids, who are 3 grandchildren, came to Bali for a month, which was fantastic over the Easter break. And the eldest of those 3, she's 8 years old. She's actually stayed with us. She's staying on with us for another 2 months, and she's attending Green School.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
We're actually being parents again.
Yeah.
But it's a whole lot easier this time. We can be a lot nicer. So yeah, it's fun. So we're really enjoying the family. We've really enjoyed the family time here, and continuing to here. So we're at Bali right now until further notice, really.
That's awesome. When I was here in winter, all I wish was to be able to be somewhere in Asia by the beach. And it just, I really miss the beach so much, and, the sun as well. So, so lucky for you. Here, for me in Easter, I went hiking on Easter Monday. We went up to the mountain because my friends and I, we wanted to see snow for the last time because it was April. So probably it was the last time. But it was so cold and raining. So I'm really, really looking forward to summer now. Anyways, I'm done with winter and the cold.
It's coming.
Yes, I hope so. Anyway, thanks again, Chris, for your time today. I know you're busy and you have your grandkids there. So you have been the sources of advice for myself. And I hope that today you can share your wisdom and knowledge with the people who are watching this.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, so to get started, can you please share with us your career journey so far, and how did you end up setting up your company in Singapore, and what are your projects at the moment?
Yeah, gosh, so it's a lot.
Yeah.
25 years of career or more, yeah. I think that. But no, I studied, or I started my university path actually studying radio and television. So I actually wanted to go into the business of making movies. I was a DJ on the radio in university.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So this is actually I say it because it's an interesting part of the story, because that was really where my heart was at the time. That's what I really wanted to do. But again, this is part of what we're talking about today, because about halfway through, I started looking at people who were graduating with the degree like that and what kind of jobs they were getting. And many weren't getting jobs. They were working in restaurants or things. And I got scared. And I said, what am I going to do? I need to, get out of school and earn money so I can live. So I changed my degree to accounting through a few little iterations, but I changed my degree to accounting because that's where I could get a good job. So I went into the accounting profession. I went into what is now the big four accounting firms. It was the big six at the time. Started working as an auditor straight out of university in Houston. This was in 1990. In 1992, the Soviet Union had just collapsed, and so that whole economy and the former Soviet Union was opening up, and my company was looking for volunteers to go to Russia to work, to do what I was doing in Houston, but to do in Russia. And frankly, that was what really saved me or allowed me to continue doing what I was doing, because I was quite frustrated working as an accountant in Houston in what I felt was a rather boring job, and I was doing it for the money. But then this opportunity came up, which I always joked, well, if I'm going to be an accountant and do a quote unquote boring job like being an accountant, I might as well do it somewhere exciting. And Russia at the time was very exciting. So I went to Moscow in 1992. Originally, I thought it would be for maybe a couple of years, and it ended up being in that part of the world for 15 years. Got married in the process, had kids. We lived in Russia, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan. We were most of the work I was doing related to the oil and gas industry at the time. And so I was there for, I worked in that same accounting firm for 10 years there in Russia. I don't, you're probably maybe too young to remember the Enron crisis, but Enron was
I read about it.
Yeah, people study it now at university.
Yes, it's a crisis.
The firm I was working, the accounting firm I was working for, were the auditors of Enron. So we had a big global scandal. Our firm imploded. Arthur Anderson was the name, and everything was kind of thrown upside down. So at that time that was a catalyst for me to change gears a little bit, and I actually went to work for. I spoke Russian by that time. I learned Russian, so I went to work for. Over the next 5 years, I worked for two different Russian oligarchs in their metals and oil and gas companies. Still doing accounting, financial reporting, basically being the bridge between the pure Russian side of things and the external side. Many companies were raising money in London and things, so it was all part of that era in the early 2000s, which was a pretty exciting time to be in Russia. And interestingly, in that time, I actually managed to make a lot of money, and kind of more than I could ever have imagined I could have made. And my kids were in an age where one was about to start university. The younger ones were young, and it was time to take them out of Russian school. So we said, let's forget about working full time right now, and let's move to America. So we moved to America, where my parents were at the time. Spent a few years there, and then really we decided to then make our life around our kids. So we built the next 10 years of our life. We planned really around where our kids wanted to go for school. So we actually moved to Slovenia, of all places, where I got involved in a school project. There was a founder of a school that I knew there, and he needed some help. So we moved to Slovenia. We were there for a couple of years. And we then heard about Bali and a school called the Green School, which I'm still a part of, I mentioned earlier. We heard about that and we said, let's take our kids to Green School for a year. So we moved to Bali for a year before moving to Singapore. During this time, we were also planning, where do we want our boys to go to high school? And we really wanted them to be in an international place with high academic standards and a place that they could really grow up as young men. And we picked Singapore. We picked a school there that we really liked, and moved to Singapore. Then this was now, I guess, about 8 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago. So then both boys finished school there, and then we no longer had any children living in the home, and we became empty nesters. Now, professionally, that's the personal side of thing, but I say that first because we really, for the last 10 years at least, we were making decisions primarily around family, secondarily around professional life. Now, I had a bit of we'll maybe talk a little bit more about this later, but when I made all this money back from Russia, I had a little bit of an identity crisis as to what I was going to do with my life at the time. And in some ways I became a little bit crazy. My wife still to this day says, yeah, you went nuts when you had all this money. And didn't know. Yeah, I was like, well, and it was the classic case of be careful what you wish for, because I had been working professionally. I had been working because I didn't want to be poor, and I didn't want to. I wanted to have enough money. Now, I never defined how much enough was for me, but suddenly I made a lot, and I was like, oh, well, that's enough, but what do I do? And I didn't know what to do with my life. I mean, I was just really confused because I had made every decision I'd made professionally was because of the money, frankly. So it took me years to really figure that out. I mean, now I talk about it like it's so obvious, and now it is in hindsight. But at the time, I didn't know that. So it took a number of years. You know, we traveled with the kids to these places where we put them in school. I dabbled in some different things professionally. By the time we got to Singapore, I actually realized that, you know, money doesn't last forever, and it doesn't grow on trees. And so I could see that maybe, you know, and I was still only 40, in my early 40s, and I thought, you know, I may run out of money before I die, so I need to start working again. So that gave me an opportunity to set up Mark Whitaker, where we worked together a number of years ago. So that was and that really came from it was an opportunity that came about because the founder of Green School, a guy named John Hardy, here in Bali, he met me when we were living in Bali, and he asked me for help with his personal finances. At the time, he was going through a bit of a transition in his life, and he needed some help. And and that just appealed to me. So I actually found that I could use the tool that I had as an accountant, even though I didn't necessarily love accounting per se. It was still a tool that I had, and I could use it to help John navigate some of the things he needed to navigate in his personal finances. He'd sold a business. He was running Green School. He wanted to take Green School global. So, and he's a entrepreneur who's, I guess a typical founder entrepreneur, a lot of energy. Sometimes, you know, he doesn't necessarily care so much about the details of things. He goes and gets things done, which is great. But he really needed someone like me who could in some ways clean up some of the mess and then help take things forward in a constructive way, non-chaotic way. So that really formed the basis for starting my company, multifamily office in Singapore, Mark Whitaker. And then we had a few other contacts of mine and people in that similar space. You know, wealthy guys who had needed some help managing funds, managing their businesses, and that's what I then built my company in Singapore around. yeah, and kind of found my feet, if you will, and found my purpose in terms of helping others realize their dreams and ambitions using the skill of accounting. So yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that we have this talk today, because I've known you for 6 years, but there's a part of you that I really didn't know. For example, you wanted to be a DJ, but we were in a club with your wife and our colleagues, and you couldn't even dance. so that come as a surprise. Now I know that you
actually it was you that could you weren't dancing, as I recall. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Me, I couldn't dance my whole life. So but you wanted to be a DJ. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And also it's an interesting point that you mentioned, that you had a personal crisis when your dreams came true. So it's actually funny, because people always set their goals, and and then when they get there, it's my personal impression is that it should feel like fantastic, should feel great, right? But in a lot of cases, it's actually the contrary. And
yeah, well, it can be the contrary if your goal is not aligned with your values. I think even if you have a very positive goal, you achieve your goal, it feels great, but usually for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, what's next? So
yeah, like for example, when I was in Vietnam, goal was to do an MBA and live and work in an international companies in Europe or somewhere else. And then when I got that, like you're right, I was happy, but for like a day or so. And then I was thinking, okay, what's next? Because I reached the goal that I wanted to do. Yeah. So what do I do now?
Yeah. And I think that's a really key thing to understand and accept as well, because it will be that way until the day we die. So there's always got to be this kind of, for me at least, a habit of, okay, here's a goal now, and you're gonna get there, and you're gonna go, okay, well, now what's next? So then it's set another goal, and that's okay. Sometimes you may take some time to figure out what the goal is, but it's really, life is just to me is a series of goals or carrots. Of saying, okay, because that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. Because as soon as you lose motivation for life, then it really can turn around on you, and life can end quite quickly, especially as you get older. So.
Yeah, of course. So the next questions, a lot of our viewers are people who are on their way to forming their career path or want to change their career path. So what you share actually are very relevant. In your opinion, what are the main criteria that people should take into consideration choosing a career path?
Yeah, well, I think one thing is certainly what are you good at, which often means is things you like to do. I can say for me what not to do in terms of saying if having money be the primary driver, that's something that you should at least be aware of. I mean, money is a big deal. I don't want to underestimate the importance of money in life, because it really does make things easier, and even necessary if there's even enough money, right?
Yeah.
But if the goal is just to be rich, I guarantee you it's not going to make you happy. So there's the concept which I learned about in my travels. You mentioned the Blue Zone travels before, and it came out of Japan, called the Ikigai, and there's a book called the Ikigai. And I didn't prepare for this, so I don't have the exact kind of the exact definition of it, but it talks about it, it's helpful for when looking at for when you're looking to make a career choice, because the Ikigai talks about what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, and what you can make money at doing, and where those things intersect. I think there's one other thing, but where those key components intersect is where you find your Ikigai, or your purpose, and your reason for getting up in the morning. So you know, obviously it's different for everyone, but money should be a factor for sure, unless you just happen to be, which some people are just born into wealthy families, and that's a whole nother crisis for people potentially. But you know, for most people, money is an issue. So make it part of the equation, but don't make it the driving equation. Otherwise, I think you really should look at the things that you enjoy doing and the things you're good at doing, to choose a career.
It's interesting what you mentioned. One of my friends here gave up a career in engineering to go back to school because she doesn't like engineer, even though she's very good at it. And another friend gave up a career in also engineering in Japan to come to Europe to become a full-time artist. So people make different career choices, but it comes down to like what you mentioned, doing something you love doing or choosing something that has potential income. So, you know, in some cases that someone else lucky enough to have a job that gives them both, you know, they can do what they love and also they make good money out of it. But they are, I think, they're the lucky ones. A lot of times people have to choose. So like you mentioned earlier, can you elaborate a little bit? What if people have to choose, you know, then what?
Yeah, well, no, I think, because I always use the example of the rock stars, right? The John Bon Jovis of the world, who obviously love making music, singing for crowds, and then they get paid $1 million to stand up there and sing, you know, do a concert. So that's like the classic example of someone who's doing what he or she loves, and getting able to get paid for it and earn a very good living doing it. But you know, I probably would challenge the notion of does it have to be one or the other? And if it does have to be, because it may have to be, but life isn't just about one thing. Life isn't just about having a job. And you know, I think we talk a lot about you follow your heart, follow your passion, which is all good. But you also do need to, again, unless you're independently wealthy, you do need to make money. So I think there maybe has been a little bit too much focus on people following their hearts and not necessarily thinking about the financial side of things. If one is able to do both things in life and whatever they are, and we're talking without talking about specifics, it's maybe difficult. But you know, I don't think there's necessarily something wrong with taking a job to live a good life, as long as you're not ignoring the other parts of your life which you are passionate about. For example, music. I mean, for someone who's passionate about music but has decided for whatever reason, or maybe they're not very good at it, so probably maybe they can't actually make a living like John Bon Jovi, because
yes,
it's a competitive business. It's a very competitive business. So you know, and being honest about that, but saying, look, I'm still gonna, you know, play in a band down at the local bar on the weekends, and do that while I have a job working as an accountant or an engineer, to get paid. So I don't think it's necessarily always well, it has to be that, or it has to be, you know, it has to be one over the other. But it is, you know, it is I recognize this day and age, it's a difficult thing, especially when so many people are being told, you know, follow your passion, on one extreme. The other extreme is you sometimes have parents who are saying you need to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer so you can make lots of money and support us in my old age. And because I didn't have those opportunities you do, and you're wasting opportunities if you don't become a doctor or a lawyer. So I understand that pressure as well from parents, which is real. So yeah.
And especially in Asia, I don't know, maybe other countries, but in Vietnam, that pressure is very, very real. So sometimes their parents choose what kind of major the kids go to, or, you know, what kind of job that they should be. I think the interference is, I think, too much sometimes, and the pressure for the kids is also too much.
Well, it is a big deal in Asia. I mean, I lived in Singapore for 6 years, and I could see that for sure. The so-called tiger moms, and it is an issue, and even within wealthy families, they put pressure on their kids to do well, to have certain careers, and I've coached a number of people in those situations, and there's not necessarily a right answer. The answer for many, the easy answer is, oh, follow your heart, don't listen to your parents, do that. I mean, that's like the liberated me first kind of thing to do, but it's not necessarily the right answer for everyone. I mean, for some people, depending on what their values are, they actually do want, and they choose, they make a choice to say, I'm going to do this, go into the family business, for example, even though I don't necessarily want to, I'd rather be doing that, but they actually make a choice to do that because they value their relationship with their parents. Because let's be honest, sometimes you would have to choose. Do I want to keep a relationship with my parents, or do I want to say goodbye to my parents and follow and do my own thing? So it's real. It's real.
Yeah. You mentioned something that's interesting, that is, be aware and make the conscious decisions, and it has to be your choice.
That is huge, and that's been something that I've learned in my life pretty recently, actually, in terms of almost anything in life that we're struggling with not wanting to do, or saying that I don't want to do this, but I'm doing it. Well, we actually always do have a choice. I mean, unless someone really has a gun to your head saying you have to do this, there is always a choice. And it may come at a cost. It may come at a cost of relationship with parents, relationship with spouse. There's lots of potential costs to making choices. But actually being conscious of that and intentionally making the choice, then the power is with you. You've actually made the choice yourself to say, I'm going to stay in this relationship with my parents, for example, and do this, and that's huge. So making that, and it really changes. It potentially changes your whole outlook, because if you think about things in your life that you sometimes complain about doing, and this is when I got this in my life, it really changed a lot. When I caught myself saying, well, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. Well, do you actually? Then don't. But what price are you going to pay? And then you say, oh, well, if I don't do that, then I'm going to get fired, I'm going to lose my job, and then I won't do it. And actually, I like that part. You go through that decision of saying, well, don't do it. And then figure out, is that really what you want? And then you can back up and say, okay, well, actually, I'm choosing to do this thing that I actually don't necessarily like doing, but I'm choosing to do it because I know what the result is otherwise. And then you're the person, then you have the power, and that thing doesn't have the power over you.
Actually, what you just mentioned now covered my next question, because it is great. It is empowerful. Is that the right word? It's
empowerment, personal empowerment.
Yeah, personal empowerment to be able to make your own decision. The problem is, and I know this with my own personal experience, is getting there, making the decision. It's hard, especially easy decision when you can make pros and cons, and when it's clear, then it's easy. But there's a lot of decisions where it's not so clear yet. What is pros? What's cons? And both decisions have pros and cons, and it's just harder. And the problem is we don't know for sure what's going to happen, because we can not go to the future and check, what it will be like. So, and that's sometimes I'm still struggling with. So can you please share more about this? Is there a strategy to make a decision?
It's funny. I was talking about this with my son the other day, talking about decision making, and I used to do that too. The list, and there's nothing wrong necessarily with making a list of pros and cons, but when you're making a list of pros and cons, where's that coming from?
What do you mean?
Well, is it coming from your head or is it coming from your heart? A list.
Yeah, probably pros and cons is coming from the head, right?
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, because and different people have different personality types, and people like to really analyze things. But the pros and cons are things that are they're by definition, and just the way you do it, it will become from your head. You'll be thinking, and even like you just said, well, I can't go to the future and see what might happen, because that in itself is saying, well, something might happen which would change my decision. So it's a fear-based kind of way of looking at things. And what if? And then you make this list of pros and cons, and then you can weight them and say, well, this has the, I'm going to put 5% on this and 10% on this, and you make a balanced scorecard approach to making a decision. I actually think that's, if you really want to get to the bottom of things, that's not the way to make a decision. The most decisions we can make in life, we actually do know what we want, but we have to get past the head and into the heart, or into the gut. We talk about what is your gut saying, and that's often difficult to do, especially for people who like yourself as well, who I know like to analyze things. It makes lists and do all that. It keeps you in your head as opposed to really making a decision from the heart. But the first thing I would say, because I think your next questions are, how do you get to the heart? How do you figure that? How do you figure one out? I say, well, first put down your pen and your paper. It's okay to do that. If it makes you feel better, do that. For me, the best way to come up with a hard decision is to have a conversation with somebody. So whether it's somebody who is a coach, or whether it's just a friend, but someone who's ideally objective as possible, probably not your parents, unless they're really kind of attuned to these things. It could be, it just depends on the topic. Someone who can ask you questions and get you talking again from your heart, not your head, and to come up with a decision. So that for me is really key to making good decisions, is looking into what your heart is saying, because usually we know we're intuitive creatures. We're just like animals, when you can see animals in the forest, and how they make signals with their facial expressions. I mean, all these things, they actually know. They know where the food is. They know where to go, where who to mate with, when to mate, when to move to find new food. We know all this stuff. It's just all this head stuff, and the pros and cons lists often get in the way.
Yeah, you're right. And also sometimes I think the list is made when we try to convince ourselves something that we actually, our gut is telling that it's, it is what we want to do, but our head is trying to convince that it should not be.
Or the head should be scared. It should be, there's all these scary things that might happen. So you better make a list to figure out what those things, or sometimes you make a decision and you're making a list and you're going to the head just to convince yourself that you're right. Which again, maybe you are, but you've really got to dig deeper than just what your head is saying, what the pros and cons list is saying.
Yeah, I think is very good point, that not to make decision based on fear, because we cannot live our life, that we cannot let our life be dictated by fear. That's not how we should live our life, right? So I want to come back to the point that you mentioned earlier about, we should not let financial insecurity affect too much our career choices. But knowing you, I have another question. Do you think it's easier for you because you have done it? You already have, the financial abundance. You have already, you can afford to, you already have the financial abundance now. Imagine if you don't have all this money, if you're not where you are now. Let's say you chose a different career path and you don't have enough financial cushion as the one that you chose it. Will you still be happy?
I hope so. I hope so. Now, I'll be honest. You know, for me, having a quote unquote financial cushion, actually is something that is very important to me, and I feel like no matter what position I'm in, and this took me some time to understand this, that I will work to get to just kind of tick that box in my life, because for me, one of my core values is actually independence and wanting to be independent. In terms of how I live my life, to have the freedom to live in different places, and not be tied to an employer. I felt like an entrepreneur since the time I can really remember. So that's just been very important to me. So I can't really imagine life without being in a position where if I don't have the financial cushion already, then I'm working toward it, and I'm feeling good about working toward it. You know, for me, there was a huge moment of coming to understand this when I was in a car, strangely enough, and I'd been struggling a lot with financial security. And this was actually after I'd made a lot of money, but I was still afraid. Because once you make money, then you're afraid of losing it. So it's this, you know, fear is, it doesn't go away. Someone with $100 million, I know plenty of people with $100 million who are not happy, and they're afraid of becoming worth 50 million. Because if the stock market's going to crash and they're going to lose half their money tomorrow. I mean, it doesn't make any sense logically, but on an emotional level, if that financial fear is driving you, then it's not going to matter how much money you have, or have little money, or how much money you have. And that was a position I found myself in after having made money. And then I let fear of losing it suddenly consume me. And it wasn't until, like, I go back to this point, sitting in the car, when I said, forget it. I'm just going to lose all my money right now. And I shut my eyes, and I did. No one had told me to do this. I've read about doing this afterwards, so I should have written the book. But I shut my eyes, and I just, for a few minutes, I just imagined that I'd lost everything. You know, no more money. And then all my worst nightmares, in a sense, have come true. My wife has left me. My kids think I'm an idiot for losing all my money. And what am I left with? I'm just me. And I remember in that moment, with my eyes shut, looking down visually and at my hands, and actually saying to myself, you know, actually, I can start over. I can do this. I can rebuild. So again, I didn't know exactly what that would look like or what it would do, but I at that point is when I really internalized the fact that I actually have the ability to, I have the ability to make money. It doesn't have to be, you know, millions and millions, but I have the ability to take care of myself and take care of my family well, provide well for myself and my family. So just having that realization in that moment really changed things for me a lot, and really was a big step towards me moving away from financial fear in my life.
Very good tip. So you use negative visualization to get over your fear. I think I read it somewhere, like, imagine what's the worst thing that can happen. Yes. I mean, based on your fears. And then you will realize that actually it's not as bad. You know, we can, like you said, start over. Yeah. Or if someone's fear, because fear is, you know, someone leaving them. So, you know, they can find someone else, you know.
Yeah, no, it's true. You actually go there. I mean, the expression I use a lot with clients and my family as well is when it comes to fear, the only way out is through.
Yeah.
So, you know, whatever it is, jumping off, you know, jumping into the water, losing money or whatever it is. The only way to actually get through the fear is to get out of the fear is to go through it, which means facing your fear.
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't have to be literal. It can be very much an imagined process to go through, and that really did a lot for me.
Yeah, very good tips. And for me personally, financial security is also very important. It's, I'm not ambitious to become rich or anything like that, but I don't want to live in the fear that, I cannot make my next bill, because I think that itself is stressful. And also you mentioned something that I completely agree, is that financial security also give you the freedom to choose what you want to do. Of course, I'm not able to do that yet like you do, but what do you think is the right balance between securing stability and not let the fear of money completely dictate your life?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is to face the fear, and we've already talked about that. So it really is to be honest with yourself, and whatever that fear is, somehow face that, acknowledge it, and figure out a way, even if it's just in a mental way, to go there and go through it. The other aspect is a bit of what we talked about before earlier, is the practicalities of money. I mean, there are, we need money to function in life, to live in a nice place. It's not, moldy or roof leaking. So I think then it is about really being honest with yourself and say, okay, what is that? What's that number? How much money do I need to make on a monthly basis or annual basis to feel like I can have those things and do those things that I, not necessarily the bare minimum, but the comfortable minimum. And there actually is a number around that, by the way. Happiness. I mean, it was one of the U.S. universities that did a study on this, and maybe you know this. I mean, it was that they came up with, it's $75,000 a year.
Yeah, I heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It probably hasn't changed, and I think it kind of works more or less everywhere. So that's the number where you've got enough money to not worry about being sick, and being able to feed yourself and have a little bit to spare, versus having to struggle. So I think being realistic about what that number is and how you're going to make that money. I mean, and it may be you need to, not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur and make all that, set up their own business and have a website selling whatever they're selling, Tim Ferriss style, selling things and making $20,000 a week on this. So it may well be that having a job with a stable employer is the best thing you can do. But again, now we're back to this choice decision of saying, if that's what it is, make that choice and don't resent it. You're making that choice for a reason. Yeah. And make the choice and be good with it. Yeah,
it's true. Once you already reach to the point that you make a decision, you have to make peace with the decision. And like you said, don't resent it. Because like you said, we made a choice for reasons, right?
Yeah.
Very wise as always. So actually, I want to tell you my one of my friends here, the one that I told you, she gave up engineer job in Japan and come to Europe to be
an artist.
To become an artist, and she's amazing. She's a singer-songwriter, and she does calligraphy. And actually, I'm in her course doing calligraphy. But she still have a sort of like a part-time job where she works for a trading company, a Japanese trading company. So her approach is, she knows that being a completely full-time artist will not be able to make her bill. So she take also a part-time job as, to get paid, to pay the bills. and so she can work on what she loves, like, you know, doing singing, piano, and you know, calligraphy, you know, all those things.
Yeah.
I actually think it's also a very nice approach, you know, like you mentioned earlier, sometimes it's not either or, right? We can,
Exactly.
you know, do both. We can choose to stay in a job that we don't enjoy as much, but, you know, we are aware that this job gives us enough money to do what we love on the side. For example, like writing a book, you know, painting, play piano. By the way, I'm interested in knowing, are you still doing anything relating to music like
To
DJ?
music, the
Yeah.
DJing. It's funny you say that. Not consistently, no. It's still a part that's somewhat locked away for me. I mean, when I lived in Singapore, I did get a piano for a little period of time and started playing. But I found myself playing the same song over and over again, and my family didn't like that. And then it was time to hit the road, so we sold it. And then actually, when I got to Bali recently, I actually decided to take, just for fun, I took a series of DJ lessons, so music DJing. So yeah, that was fun. That was so yeah, it's not something I'm intending to make a career, even a second career out of. But yeah, occasionally I feel the need just to do something with that. So yeah.
Yeah, but why not, right? It's more like something that you always wanted to do. So, you know, and it gives you joy, then why not? And
Yeah.
now I think you're one of the few people that are, you know, that can afford to do that, you know, to do whatever you want to do now.
Yeah, no, what I have been more aware of just in the past few months has actually been um, doing things that I enjoy outside as well. So diving, playing golf, um, yeah, that kind of thing. I've been doing a lot of that here in Bali, which has been
Yeah.
great.
Maybe one time when COVID is over, and if I'm happen to be in Bali, maybe at that time you graduated from your DJ course and you can do DJ for private parties.
That's right. Exactly. On the golf course after having gone diving. So yeah. Yeah.
So what if you have a general advice, or not one, but if you have general advices for to give to young people about career path, what will you say? Or if you imagine talking to a 20-year-old version of yourself, what will you say?
Yeah. I'd say the first thing that comes to mind is don't take things quite so seriously. You know, you can relax from time to time, because I think that's something. When I got into my career, when I look at how I was as a kid, and then even throughout high school, through college, and doing things and experimenting with things that I enjoyed, you know, when I went into the career, I became very serious and very much like, okay, got to make the money, got to do this, and it's like it's all my responsibility. I'm going to bear the weight of the world on my shoulders, and then I just became a more, I'd say, boring person, and yeah, just not living life to the fullest. So if I were to go back, I would say, you know, there's a number of years where I was just too focused on the career. Again, not to say I shouldn't have done those career choices, because they're very much part of who I've become. But I could have been a bit more relaxed along the way.
Okay.
Honestly. Yeah, that's probably the main thing that I would say.
So basically, career is important, but not the only important in life. Meaning
Absolutely.
you should also
Yeah.
live your life
Yeah.
besides career. Yeah, doing something fun that you like as well.
Yeah. Which and again, doing something fun or starting a family, you know, that could be part of it for people as well. And some people do that, but then they continue to focus on their career. And then they, you know, they blink and their kids are grown up and they didn't realize it. So you know,
I think that's a little bit sad, right? Yeah, I mean for the kids,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah, well, and for the person too. I mean, yeah.
But the thing is,
it sounds trite, but it's like, nobody sits on their, nobody's lying on their deathbed saying, I wish I'd earned more money, or I wish I'd spent more time at the office.
yeah, that is completely true.
True.
Because we're talking about career choices today, so I did a little bit research, and I'm also curious myself, what would be the career field that still are good in the next 10 years? And
yeah, what did you learn?
what are your guesses? I combine a few that I found on the internet.
Okay. So I think the way the world is going, I think, I mean, if you go into the technology space, you can probably go into blockchain, not necessarily cryptocurrency, but blockchain technology. That's on the technology side. I think, engineering, medical engineering, that's going to be that's going to be big. The other thing that I think people underestimate is actually entertainment, because entertainment is actually getting bigger and bigger. I mean, I'm still, my mind is still can't fathom the number of channels, TV channels that are available through whatever medium, cable TV or just internet TV. Because when I grew up with 3 or 4. And just how does the world have time to consume this much entertainment? But it does, and I think it's on. There's a trend that continues to head in that way. So, being an artist, to your friend's point, is not necessarily a bad place to be. I mean, I think you'll be able to. I think being an artist or having an artistic based career will be in some ways easier going forward in the future than it was, say, 50 years ago.
I hope that is true, and it's good news for all the artists, because I know they have been having a very tough time in the last year or so. But go back to the list that I found. It's interesting. You are right. Software engineers, technology, and also database and statistic also is something that is important. And engineer, of course, and of course, healthcare, and also teaching. Yeah.
Okay.
So teaching, coaching. So you are in the right position.
Yeah.
And also, of course, finance. So I couldn't find. But you're right about entertainment. Actually, I think it's also an interesting point. Maybe you should contact this list and tell them to add to their list. But thank you, Chris, for today. As always, it has been it has been great. A very interesting, point of view from your side. And as always, you're very energetic, and I love that energy. And the viewers definitely can see that. So thank you again for your time today, and for you guys who are watching or listening. If you have any more questions for Chris, please reach out to us. Or if you have any other topics that you want us to cover, you can do so via our email or website. Actually, it's interesting that our main topic today is about career choices, but you actually, Chris, cover a lot of other points too, like decision making or get over your fear. It's very, very good tips. And actually, Chris will be Chris will be also sharing in details more about what he discussed today with us in his upcoming book, that is Fly, an Empty Nester Search for Longevity in Life in Marriage. Well, it is upcoming when we record this video, but by the time we publish it, probably you already can find it on Amazon, right? You will sell it on Amazon. I'm looking forward to getting a copy. So by the way, how is it?
Yeah, how's the book? Or I really enjoyed. It's a process I really enjoyed writing. It's gone through 2 rounds of editing now, and with positive reviews from 2 editors. And so it's ready to be published. So my next stage is to work on the artwork for the cover, and then to get it physically pushed out in the channel. So hopefully by the time you're ready with this, mine will be ready as well. So
yes. I actually love reading your articles on LinkedIn. Sometimes you publish it. I love your writing, so I'm looking forward to reading your book. Probably it will be available on Amazon, right?
Yes, it will.
Yeah. So thank you Chris and thank you guys for listening, and hẹn gặp lại các bạn vào các tập tiếp theo nhé. Goodbye.
Bye.